Most people settle because they don't know how to maximize the potential that God has given them. Welcome to the Thrive College podcast, where we help young leaders navigate the challenges and opportunities of their future and faith. Each episode, we'll be giving the mic to young leaders to ask tough questions to some of the world's most influential voices. We're excited you're here with us today. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Thrive College podcast. I'm Nina Davidson, and today in the studio we have, of course, the amazing Lisette. Woo! She's been on the podcast a few times. Lisette, remind us of where you intern at Bayside.
Yes, I intern with small groups at the Granite Bay campus.
Yeah.
So.
And random fact about you, what did you eat for breakfast this morning?
Oh.
Super into breakfast.
I had an orange, yes, and a breakfast burrito.
Oh, okay. I was going to be
You have
sad
to
for
remember
you.
the orange, because that's like the healthy part, you know, and then the breakfast burrito is
So
just
if
like...
there were eggs, that's a decent start.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Some bacon in there.
Also in the studio, we have the youth ministry legend, Doug Fields. Give it up for him.
Yay!
Yeah, you gave it up for yourself. That's good. What did you have for breakfast?
I had a protein shake.
Nice. Very healthy.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's
yeah.
chocolate.
Well, the older you get, the more you lose muscle. So you don't need to learn this for many years, but that's what I've been told. You got to eat a lot of protein. And so I didn't have time to eat it this morning because I jumped on a plane early, so I drank it.
I love
There
it.
you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
So a little
And
bit.
Diet Coke.
And
So you got the protein.
You were
and then
so healthy.
There it is.
and a little bit of
There
sugar.
it is. I want to be honest.
you heard it here. You
There
can
you go.
can have unhealthy if you go
Yeah,
for the
and that's
healthy
some people's
start.
coffee though these days. Like
That's
they
right.
do a
Yeah.
Coke instead of
I
coffee.
didn't drink coffee until I'm 60 years old. I started drinking coffee at 60.
Because you were tired, or
No,
what
because all
happened?
my kids were grown, and it's
Yeah.
like everybody meets at the coffee shop,
Yep.
and I'm like driving through
Like a gas
McDonald's to get a Diet Coke to go to. So I said, I'm gonna suck it up and learn how to like
Learn
coffee.
Do you like it now?
No, but I
No, you're
drink
still
it.
on the diet Coke.
Yeah, I drank it.
I love
And
it.
actually, at the airport today, I showed up with my Starbucks app because my wife
Oh, nice.
has
Yeah.
given me money on my Starbucks app, and I go up there to use it. And I was at a place called the Tea Leaf, and they don't
Oh,
take my
yes.
Starbucks.
Oh
Yeah.
no!
You're still learning about
I
coffee, is
am.
what I'm
I'm a
hearing.
total
If you're
rookie.
going up to a tea leaf stand,
Yep.
it's a
He's like-
Starbucks.
Yep, I thought it was Starbucks.
Pink drink. Where's the pink drink?
That's so funny. Okay, a little bit more about your formal background.
Yeah, there you
By way just of my story, I was a youth pastor when I was so young, like
I
19
knew I
years
liked
old.
you.
I
Yeah.
didn't notice.
And I read my first 2 years in youth ministry, which if you have not yet read that book and you are someone that's considering being a youth pastor, that's where you need to start. And there are so many pages that are literally earmarked and highlighted and underlined because I needed that material as I was just getting started.
Yeah.
So you have had a tremendous influence, not just over the people that you led as a youth pastor, but an entire network of youth pastors that have been encouraged and equipped to live out their calling. So tell us just a little bit what it's been like being influenced by an incredible youth pastor.
Yeah.
And then having the ability to steward that influence and help encourage and equip youth pastors. What's that been like over the last 4 years?
Well, I think the steward part is new because I didn't see it coming. So I got married young, and when I asked my now father-in-law if I could marry his daughter, he said, "Well, you're a youth pastor, and I know you don't make very much money. What are you going to do after you're done being a youth pastor?" And I didn't have an answer.
Yeah.
I was 20 years old and I didn't know. And I said, maybe I'll train youth pastors. But I became a Christian when I was a teenager. And so I felt God's call in my life. I've never had a desire. I've worked at churches where they thought I was going to be the next senior pastor. And I've never had that desire ever. And so everything that I've done in youth ministry has been out of the trenches. I didn't even set out to write the books that I wrote, but I would speak at places and I would give things away that we were doing. They would ask, and I'd just give it away. And that kind of evolved into like, you should put that in a book and you should do this. And then my pastor encouraged me to do that. So the stewarding was breathed into me, and then I was just kind of faithful in that calling and writing it down and that type of thing. But I feel obviously now, I'm 60, so I'm at the last season of my leadership, and now I feel more responsibility to pass it on. I think
Yeah.
I've been learning. Even when I wrote books, I would say, the only difference between you and me is that you know, if you stack my books up, really, if you turn them upside down, they were all the mistakes I made. So you take a mistake and you
Yes.
flip it upside down, there's a principle,
Listen,
right?
Yeah.
And so that's really where the youth ministry library came from, and just people in my life that encouraged me to, you know, write things down and put things in print and help other people. And so I've always kind of had this like hold everything with a loose grip. Even if our youth ministry company, Download Youth Ministry, it's like we charge people it domestically so we can give stuff away around the world.
Yeah.
Like anybody
I love
that
that.
doesn't speak the English language, they get our stuff for free.
Yeah. Again, if you're a youth pastor and you have not yet hit up downloadyouthministry.com, you are working way harder than you need to.
That's a good point.
The truth is, there are great youth pastors around the country who've done this for years and years and years, and all of them send their resources,
Yeah.
and it's just a
Amazing.
great place to be encouraged. And if you're having a tough week and you just need some great ideas, hit it up.
It's just, you know, so many great ideas die on a hard drive. And even as you
Yep.
describe Download Youth Ministry so eloquently,
Yeah.
I get a little chill inside thinking about the really hundreds and hundreds of youth workers around the world now that have submitted their stuff
Yes.
that other people. I met a guy last week in Atlanta, and his name is James Howard, and he says, I have a youth group of 35, and my stuff is being used by hundreds of other churches.
Incredible.
And he starts tearing up, and I'm like, I love that, because
Amazing.
you know,
So cool.
just there's so many good people doing great things, and their stuff needs to be shared with other people.
I love
really
that
good.
so much. So, in the Thrive College podcast, your first time on, hopefully many more times
Okay,
to come.
come on.
Here's the deal. We love to pass the mic to the rising generation of Christian
Yeah.
leaders, which in this case is Lisette, to ask their questions. So, Lisette, we've already had a little bit of fun getting to know
Yeah.
Doug and his passion, but what questions do you have for Doug?
Bring it on.
Yes. Oh my gosh, this is so
He's
cool.
got his
to hear.
Diet Coke. He's fueled up.
I think it's super cool to hear that I feel like youth pastors have a lot of resources and help, and they themselves are getting passionate and excited about the ministry and the work that they're doing. I find though oftentimes it's hard to spread that same passion and desire for the ministry onto the leaders who are then leading and helping, because as you know, you need a whole team that has the same shared vision to help it thrive in the ministry, help the ministry thrive. And so for you been having experienced so much, what would you say is the best way of getting the leaders to care as much as you do for the ministry, so that they can then
That's good.
spread it off and it can do better?
Well, one, it's a great question. Two, I actually don't think leaders will ever care more than the primary leader, or they shouldn't. I think the primary leader carries the weight of caring for the ministry. So if you're a young leader and you're listening to this and you're like, why won't they care as much as me? They probably won't ever. Like if you're called to be the leader of that ministry, I mean, I want them to care as close as they can, but you know, the primary leader needs to think about that ministry 24/7. So I think you have to model it. So what I mean by that is I need to, as a youth pastor, I need to be pouring into my leaders in the same way that I want them pouring into their teenagers. So I kind of become, this is a little bit of a bait and switch. Okay, so do you know what a bait and switch is?
I can kind of get the term.
So the term comes from many years ago in the newspaper. Okay, and I'll show you afterwards. I'll
Before my
explain.
time.
I'll explain what a newspaper is. But you would see an ad for a car dealership, and it would say, "This new car is on sale for $12,000," and you'd be like, "That's a good deal," and you go there, well, the car's not there. But we've got this other car that's available for $15,000. So it's kind of they use this as a bait and switch it. So here's the bait and switch. I went into youth ministry. The bait was, Doug, your life was changed as a teenager, and so you're going to go there and change teenagers' lives. And when I got into it, I realized, I don't really. It's my volunteers who have the greatest impact. They're the frontline leaders. So the bait and switch for me was, I went in thinking I was going to have this youth group and I was going to have such an impact on the kids, the students. And what I realized as I matured, my greatest impact is really on my leaders. And so my leaders are my youth group. So I'm trying to model to them what I want them to do with students.
Mm.
So that passion is really more caught than taught. It doesn't mean we don't teach, and we teach on, you know, discovering your giftedness and how to be relational and how to lead good conversations and how to care for kids in crisis and that type of thing. We'll teach on that, but the caring part is I'm trying to model that as the leader to them. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's really good.
That's so
that makes
helpful.
sense.
Yeah, I was also thinking, we were talking about how there's a lot less people, it seems now, who are interested in going into youth ministry. And I think that's in part, maybe what I hear some people say is, man, I don't want to just hang out with teenagers all my life. There's someone that does, right? That's the impact that they want to make. Then there are other people who say, like, I've grown a little bit older. I feel like I can communicate well to an older crowd.
Yeah.
I think that gives a vision for both. There's
Yeah.
someone who's going to relate really, really well to the youth, and then there's someone who maybe that's not their lane, but everyone can minister to a group of leaders.
Yeah.
So I think
No, it's
that
really
just
good.
opens up youth ministry,
Yeah.
hopefully, as a possibility to more people.
When I was in my early 20s, I think that I probably, if I went into a restaurant, let's play this scenario out, go into a restaurant and there's a booth filled with teenagers and there's another booth filled with volunteers and there's another booth filled with parents.
Uh-huh.
I think in my 20s, I want to sit at the booth with teenagers.
Yeah.
And now I want to go to that booth first because
Mhm.
I want to make sure that they feel loved, and I'll steal their fry, and then I'll go over to the parents and make sure that the parents pay for the kids in the booth.
Mhm.
But like where I want to sit and like enjoy my meal and really have good conversations is
Yeah.
with the adult volunteers.
Yeah.
And so I
So
think
good.
some of it, the seasonality
sense.
of it changes, but I really encourage young youth workers like you, like
Mm-hmm.
you're young, I would say you still want to go in, even though maybe you're more drawn to the students. I would say if you're the lead youth worker at a church, your primary job is to those building that team. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
really good.
That's
Thank
really
you.
great.
Yeah, that's great.
As a follow-up to that, and I know you have another
No, go
question to
for it,
say,
yeah.
what do you say to the 20-year-old who is the head youth pastor that says, like, I have a really hard time having a conversation and really trying to influence someone who's a good bit older than me?
Yeah.
Cast vision for them that you can do that, and they're not wanting you to do that.
Yeah, totally. The people want to be led.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, Paul made it very clear to young Timothy, let no one despise your youth.
Yeah.
Not just despise youth, but set an example, right? In
Yeah.
speech and love and conduct and purity. And so I think every youth worker has faced just what you said, that tension of like, these people are old, and how do I lead them? Well, you lead them because you're a leader.
Yes.
You know, so you care for them, you set direction. You may not have the experience they have. Maybe you aren't a parent and you don't have some of their cultural connections and things that the older people have, but they can still be led. Now, if they are adults that can't follow, then you have a different issue, right? Because, you know, you get, before you're a good leader, you got to be a good follower. And so, let's say you were my leader, and you're young, and I'm old, but I've been a leader. I can follow your lead, right? I just got to know. I got to know that you care about me. You're respecting my time. That you're not just flying by the seat. Young leaders have to understand that, some of the older people in your world, they're used to like, okay, I got things, I got kids, I got sports, I like respect my time. So don't show up 20 minutes late to a meeting that you called, that type of thing. So I think that's some of the tension of leading up
Yeah.
is understanding like you gotta have some of your act together, but it's not like older people like, I can't follow you because you're young. No, if you're a leader, lead.
Yeah.
And even, I'm older than the pastor that I work for right now, but I still lead up.
Yeah.
So I still, I need to, he doesn't know about our youth ministry all the time, so I need to lead up, making sure he's aware of it. So as you're leading, no matter how old you are, you're always leading up.
Lead up.
So good.
I like that. Lead up. I do have a question. I guess it's kind of similar. I keep thinking like of setting a culture. Like, you said passion is not something that can really be taught, so you have to like set that culture by just being the culture, I guess, in a sense. So when it comes to maybe your culture in your ministry is already kind of toxic, it's not going so well, the leaders are maybe coming in late, or the group is not super not doing well.
Yeah.
How would you change that and make that shift without it being like super abrupt, in a sense of like not being so strict or harsh on the leaders, but making it clear like, okay, this is the expectations and the, you know, kind of the culture that we want to set for our
Yeah, well, changing culture it's easier. You know, we just kind of heard a message here at the Thrive Conference on changing culture. And when you listen to the message, you're like, oh, that's a great point, that's a great point, that's a great point. And everything sounds really easy, but it's not easy, right? It takes a lot of time. So everything takes longer than you think it will take you. That change, the only person that likes change, Mark Twain said this, the only person that likes change is a wet baby. Like everybody else hates change, right?
That's really good.
And so change takes time. So changing that culture, if I see toxic things in that culture, I'll address it several different ways. I'll address it as a group, being real general. Hey, here's a new direction we're heading, and I've noticed that like, we have a lot of adults standing in the back, and you know, this new season of ministry, we're going to sit on the floor with the student. If you have a back problem, let me know. I'll pull up a chair, whatever. I'll take all their excuses, but I'm painting a picture of whatever it is. I'm making this up as a relational ministry. But then, so I'll address it as a group, but then I'm also going to address it individually. So I might pull you aside, Lizette, I'm so appreciative of you.
I thought it was going to be a bad thing.
Well,
like,
no,
adjust the balance.
We're role playing. We're role playing, so it is a bad thing. It's an average thing.
There you go.
But I might pull you aside and say, I'm so grateful that you're part of the youth ministry. But when you come in and all the leaders huddle and talk, it's distracting from what we want our adults to do. So I love it that you guys love each other, and so what I'd love to do is I'll even treat everybody. We're going to go to Carl's Jr. after youth group, but save all that talking for afterwards. So when you come in, I want you to hit the road like you're looking for the students in your small group. You know what I mean? So I'm now doing this individually, one-on-one. I've done it collectively, but I also know that it's just going to take time. Like it's changing a culture. Yeah. But as a leader, you want to spot that. Don't get mad at the natives, like missionaries. It would be like, you got to learn that culture. You learn the culture of dysfunction, learn the culture of miscommunication. You may be a leader that has followed somebody that those volunteers have been there for a long time, and there was never expectations on them before, and now you're coming in and establishing new expectations. But it just takes a while.
That's good. Yeah, that's good.
That's really good.
I like that. I think, and I just think something that you're saying, approaching that conversation, I think, can be hard for some people because they don't know how to do it. My old boss once said, you sandwich it. So you do something nice, and then you do the hearty meat, and then you do something nice at the end. You say something, hey, I appreciate you, I'm grateful for you. Yeah. This is the issue, but then, hey, let's go out to eat after
and
this.
As long as it's sincere, like if all you can think about is the hearty meat, the confrontation, and you're like, I don't know what to say.
Like, we're here today.
Yeah, your shoes are white.
Right.
Then you've taken it too far. So for example, many years ago, after church, we would go out with all of our volunteers, and then as Kathy and I were driving home, we would write on a napkin. And I would just list the volunteers, and I would rate them A, B, or C. And we would do this together, my wife and I. And really, if anybody got an A, our job was to say, like, how do we continue to affirm them? Like, she's an A player. Like, I want to keep her an A. If they got a B, then like, what do we need to do to help them become an A? And if they're a C, how do we move them into children's ministry? Something like that. But really, my job as a leader is to make sure nobody gets at that C spot. But so as leaders, we have to constantly be evaluating leaders, because if we just treat leadership as like, I need 3 Sunday school teachers, check, and then I move on to the next task, I might have found those leaders, but I haven't developed them into leaders. And so we got to constantly be doing life with them. It goes full circle back to that modeling. Like, I may be called the youth pastor, but I'm really the pastor to my volunteers, who are the youth pastors.
So good. I am the pastor to the youth pastors, who are my volunteers. Well, as we're wrapping up, Doug, what is the one thing that you would say to a young Christian leader?
Do I have to limit it to one?
One thing.
Let me just say,
you have an open mind.
I would say you need to get people in your life who will sniff out or call out any arrogance. Because typically young leaders who are arrogant are insecure. So, but nobody's honest. You know, like in the church world, we rarely develop people. You know, I mean, I've gone most of my life without ever anybody critiquing my communication. So, you know, for a long time I spoke for a living, but nobody ever, my pastor one time said, "Your weddings are too long." Okay, that's about as much critique as I got. But my point is, you can be a leader in the church for many years and never get feedback. So I would say a young leader, align yourself with a truth teller, somebody who loves you, but will also kind of point out some areas of concern, so you don't get stranded on an island too early. So, you know, people right out of Bible college or something, they want to get to their job and they go work at a church, and the pastor or the search committee just hired them and left them alone, you know, take care of the youth, and they go into their other things, and then nobody develops them. So that's what I love about Thrive College, right? Like you're getting developed, you're getting mentored, you're getting looked over, people are having tough conversations with you, they're watching you, they're developing you. So I would say to a young leader, you know, if you can't get into Thrive College,
there you go. Get into Thrive College. That's your first
there
step.
you go.
Yeah.
You know, get around people who will care for you and help you in some of your insecurities and your weaknesses, and because you begin to develop skills that if nobody says anything to you, all of a sudden you wake up and you're in your 40s and you're like, oh, I didn't know I wasn't supposed to be doing that.
Wow.
That's
That's
really
so
good.
helpful.
So I would say that's what a young leader.
That's super
Yeah,
important.
I guess that was one thing.
That was one thing. That was one
Yes.
really good thing.
Okay.
With,
good.
yeah, stuff to back it up. It's so good.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Doug, for taking
Absolutely.
the time to pour into us. And
Absolutely.
I know there are people listening to this in youth ministry and considering that pathway. They're going to be so encouraged and equipped. So everything that you've done with your life, thank you for coming on and just sharing
Absolutely.
with the listeners.
Absolutely.
Appreciate
Thanks
it.
for asking great questions. Way to go.
Awesome.
Thank you for joining us today on the Thrive College podcast. We hope that today's episode has empowered you to navigate the challenges and the opportunities of your future in your faith. If you really enjoyed our conversation today and appreciated what we had to offer, we would love for you to write a 5-star written review and share it with your friends. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.